All right, welcome ladies and gentlemen to Resilience is Your Superpower. My name is Mio Santana. I'm your host and I'm the owner and founder of Divine Journey, a transformational coaching program. And I'm also the founder of Resilience, a breakthrough journey to self-love, which starts in June and which is the reason why we started this program. So when I was thinking about the name of my program, I was renaming it because it had been so successful since last year we launched the 8-week program. It's been so successful and we were like, we need to find the right name for this program. And I was thinking back to my journey of resilience and everything that I went through in my life, and also my own figuring out who I was and all the personality assessments that I took, all the programs that I took. And a lot of times they would ask you to ask 5 people around you to tell you what your strengths are, what your traits are. And oftentimes the people around me would say that I was resilient. And so that always stayed with me. And so when I was thinking about the name of the program, I was thinking resilient, but then I thought, wait a minute, I looked at all the women that had taken the program and I realized that they all carry the same trait. They were all resilient women. And so this program is in honor of not only all the women that have taken my program, but also all the women out there who are going through a journey of resilience, who these talks may support in overcoming their challenges and obstacles to get to where they are today. So I went ahead and reached out to some of the most amazing women that I know on this planet who are doing great things, who have had their own journey of resilience and who are accomplishing things in this life, who are go-getters, who are out there making a difference. And I asked them to come and give their time to talk about their own stories. And so maybe this will give you guys out there some inspiration. And so I'm so honored because today I'm so grateful to be sitting down with the one and only Vivian Olodun. And Vivian Olodun is a serial entrepreneur, a micro-influencer, an author who wrote Stumbling Through Adulthood, an interactive journal about falling forward. She is a highly sought after keynote speaker sharing about intersectionality, managing rejection, and building resilience. She co-founded a boutique marketing firm that has grown to over 6 figures in less than 2 years. Her nonprofit, Behind the Leaf, hosts Flourish Media Conference annually in Miami, Florida, introducing her little black book of millionaires to small business owners looking for angel investors. This woman is a powerhouse. Thank you so much, Vivian, for being here. Welcome.
Thank you so much for having me. And thank you everyone for watching this. If you're watching this on the replay, go ahead and put hashtag replay in the comments so that we can support this woman and keep her encouraged so that she can continue to do this. This is amazing.
Thank you so much. Thank you. And so we always like to give the audience a little bit of background about you in your own words. So if you could just tell us like what you're up to, what you're about, who's Vivian, and just give us a little bit about you.
You know what? I am a mom now, which is a very new title that I'm taking ownership of. I have a brand new baby. I am a business owner. I'm a wife. I'm a sister and a friend. But the thing that people are the most excited about when they learn about me is that I'm an advocate for funding women in business. And I really believe that as a whole, as a society, as adults, when we care about something, we put money in front of it. We spend money on it. If you ever want to know the things that you care about the most, look at how you spend your money. And you know what? That's a good exercise as well, because it allows for you to take ownership, to take stock of what you're doing, and to realign that. Because if you're looking at what you're spending your money on and it doesn't align with your values, then that's an opportunity for you to make those changes. So 6 years ago, my business partner and I, we raised $15 million to invest into businesses that are owned and operated by women in Miami, Florida. And for the last 6 years, we've hosted the Flourish Media Conference here in Miami, where we take women business owners and we take very successful individuals and we simply make sure that they know each other, because a lot of successful people, financially successful, do want to be able to give back and they do want to make a legacy and they want to be able to make ripple effects, positive ripple effects in the world, but they don't know who to connect with. When you get to a certain level of success, believe it or not, you're surrounded by other people who might be offended by your charity, who don't need it, who want to do business with you, but they're looking for large sums of money. And there's many, many, many women business owners out there who are spending their last dime to grow their business, who are putting their kids in with family members or with other people because they're willing to do the work. Because if you want to get anywhere in the world, you need money or you need time. And there's people who have time, but they don't have any money. And there's people who have lots of money, but they don't have the time. So they want to be able to connect those two people together. And it's been nothing but a pleasure to be able to be that advocate, to shine my light in the world that way. And it's something that I'm very passionate about. I think that it takes money to make money, but it also takes money to make a really big impact.
Amazing. Beautiful. Wow. That's such an impact that you're making for women everywhere to expand and grow and to be more successful and have more sustainable businesses, right? Because that's so needed, especially nowadays. Beautiful. So I always like to preface the conversation with what is resilience, right? Because, it's this term that's thrown around a lot, but really, what is it? And many people ask me, what is it to be resilient, Mio? And so the formal definition of resilience is a person's ability to handle stress, to handle failure, rejection, criticism, and I like to also add internal criticism because, we could do a lot of that on ourselves, and to handle life in general. And resilient people tend to be the ones that know that stress happens and learned how to expect it and manage it anyway. And so resilient people also possess a 4-letter word that I love, and it's not a curse word. And it is grit. Resilient people are gritty, and grit is courage, conscientiousness, and endurance. And so tell us a little bit about your journey, Vivian, that got you to where you are. So what was that thing that made you realize, as you were going up and in your journey, what was that thing that made you realize that you wanted to do what you're doing now? And just give us a little bit about your journey to begin with, and then we'll continue the convo.
Sure. I mean, I think that when someone sees me or when they see any quote unquote successful person, they forget that there's a journey behind that, and that the ability to be resilient is the opportunity to deal with a lot of stressful things. And, when you see someone who can be poised or who is able to handle a lot of stress, know that that comes from practice. And I think if you're watching this and you're trying to grow and build your resilience, remember that it's something that's done over time. For me personally, honestly, why I'm so resilient is because when I was 14 years old, I became pregnant and I had an abortion. That's why. And every day since that day, because I grew up in a spiritual household, my family's Christian. I'm Christian to this day. I was raised with certain beliefs, and it was hard to make that decision. But it's so interesting that you said grit, having that endurance and that courage in areas where you are fearful. And that was a very pivotal moment for me in my life because I chose myself.
Yes.
You know what I mean? I just chose myself. I took a look at the people around me, and I took a look at the other individuals who were, who are examples of what my future could have been had I chosen to keep that child. And I thought about the lifestyle that not only I would have, but then my child would have, or the limitations or things that I would need to think twice about doing. And I thought, I want to live a certain type of life. And truly, it's the life that I'm living right now. It's the life that I live right now is the exact life that I wanted to be able to live. And being posed with that choice and knowing that I had the capacity to choose myself, and then making that choice, and then waking up every day and saying, okay, you chose this life. So what are you going to do with it? It wasn't enough for me to go to school and do well, and maybe I would graduate. And that's certainly something to celebrate, being able to graduate from high school. I know there's people in my world who have not done that. So I want to celebrate them as well. But there's people, I could have gone and had a job at Walmart. That's a very, there's certain things that might be okay for others, but I chose this.
Right.
I chose this. So it's not okay for me to have a 4 out of 10. It's not okay for me to do a 6 out of 10. I need to at least strive for the 8, 9, 10.
Mhm.
And when you strive for the 8, 9, 10, when you shoot for the stars, you land on the moon, you still left the earth, right?
Yes.
So, so that's really a story of my own decisions. And, I didn't put it in my book, Stumbling Through Adulthood, but I did talk about the different opportunities that I've had and different struggles that I've had over my life, including being in a relationship where someone was abusive to me. I documented where I was actually struck in my book, and also witnessing that for other women and thinking, what puts you in these situations where you think you need to look for love in certain ways that are very, very toxic, and what are the conditions in which this becomes the norm. And when I look at the stories or these antidote around me, what I was seeing as a Nigerian and African American and Hispanic woman in my own community was when women don't have the opportunity to make decisions for themselves, when they don't have the opportunity to make economic decisions for themselves, they tend to feel like they have to put up with fill in the blank. You put up with a lot of stuff that you shouldn't have to put up with. And unfortunately, what happens? You have a ripple effect. Your children learn that that's okay. Your children learn that this is the way that you should treat others. And one of the things that has always stuck with me is something that my mother reminds me of often, and even to this day, is that you teach people how to treat you.
Oh, yes.
Train them, right?
Teach people how you want to be treated. Exactly.
You
All
teach
day. And
them.
also verbally and non-verbally.
Yes, verbally and not verbally. Yeah, that's so important too, right? Because you don't have to be a big boisterous person or a really loud person, but you can stand in your truth and show and build your resilience simply in those small decisions that you make every day.
And how you treat yourself as well. Because
Yeah.
people see how you treat yourself and then they treat you accordingly. That's absolutely right.
Exactly. That's so true. Yes, very much so. So, when I look at why my life is the way it is, or why I'm okay with kind of standing in my truth, it always comes back to that decision that I made. It's just that I just chose to show up. And sometimes I can even remember being in situations where, and I should say, my high school sweetheart, the person that I was pregnant by and chose not to have the child, went to jail for for many things, but he for gang affiliated behavior. Went to jail pretty soon after that, and was in jail the entire time that I was in college. And when I graduated from college, think about the difference here. When I graduated from college with my degrees, because I have 3 of them, and he was released from prison, within several months, he was shot and killed and died in front of, in his grandmother's arms, who raised him, in his childhood home.
Wow.
And, I have family members, and I've talked about it in my book, Stumbling Through Adulthood, who struggle with addiction and the ripple effect that causes also. And I learned that while it's good you need to be resilient, that it's important to learn coping behaviors. You need to learn positive coping behaviors. It's not going to help you to get to your true goals if you're trying to cover up those shortcomings with alcohol or substances, or any number of things. Those things are not going to give you that really impactful change that you want to see in yourself and in the world. And it's important for you to care about yourself and to care about how you treat yourself and how you show up in the world, because as Mia just said, not only are you showing other people how to treat you, but you're also reinvesting into yourself and learning what works well for you, because happy people can be happy for other people. If you're miserable, that means that you can't celebrate when other people are doing well. If you're not doing well, or if you're aching in your body, you can't you can't show up for those things that you were destined to be a part of. You can't be in those meetings. You can't grow that business. You can't raise those children. There's so many things that come outside of learning how to manage your rejection, your challenges, to build your resilience. It's really a phenomenal skill to have, and it's a life-changing skill to have.
Absolutely. And you mentioned something super important, which I want to spend a little time on, which was, you said, don't mask, like, don't mask your, how are you saying it? Like
your shortcomings or your challenges.
Your shortcomings or your challenges. Exactly. When the idea of being resilient is to overcome challenges. But I think what you're talking about is, instead of surviving and just getting by and getting through it, actually thriving and actually overcoming it and actually taking it and learning from it, versus just getting by and saying, I just need to survive. Let me drink this bottle of, whatever, because it makes me feel better and it gets me through today. But I think what you're talking about guides you more towards, like, what's going to be sustainable for the future, and what's going to take me to the next level, and what's going to really help me to get there, and cultivate that resilience from within. So that's super powerful.
Thank you. Thank you. And I think that, the program that you're offering is so powerful, because you're giving people the exact skills that they're going to need to be able to thrive. My business, based in Miami, Florida, is called Flourish Media, right? And the reason why we're using that is, years ago, when I started doing consulting and business consulting, the top service that I had, most 7 years ago now, was called Flourish. I had the seed, harvest, and flourish. Those were the three programs that I had. And I chose that because when I was younger, my family, we used to garden all the time. And I understood the activity of cultivating, the activity of being able to see something planted properly in the right environment with the right type of support, and being able to truly flourish. So for me, I'm a marketing strategist. So I talk about messaging and visuals and content all the time. And I know that there's so many businesses out there, small businesses, that they would benefit from thinking bigger. So when I opened my business, I was leaving from being a marketing director for a very large real estate agency. And I was working with a lot of luxury buyers and luxury environment all the time. And I had the privilege of working on a Super Bowl commercial. And every day I would go into the office, and we had a team of over, I think 34 people were on our team, 34 people, 34 minds participating and creating these things. And when I became a business consultant and I would come across small business owners and women business owners, I would see them thrive and want to grow, want to be able to develop things at that level, but not taking the time to invest in even having an assistant. And then they would tear themselves apart about, well, I wasn't able to make this launch, or my social media doesn't look good, or there were some typos in my newsletter, or whatever it may be. And that just breaks my heart, because I think no one person can do that. No one person can do that. And no one person is going to be able to build their resilience. I'm Nigerian. My father's from Nigeria. And I think we all know the African proverb that it takes a village to raise a child, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Well, guess what? You're a child too.
Yeah.
That's why I named my book Stumbling Through Adulthood, because one of the revelations that I had is that, we never really grow up. We're always learning. We're always developing. We're always in a situation where we can learn from one another. And I want to encourage you to, if you see a place in your life where you want to make a change, to start really thinking about investing in the environment that you're in, the environment, so that you're planted where you can grow, and not only grow, but where you can flourish. I shared with you, some really intimate information. Unless you know me on a personal level, you would never know that history about me. And not because I try and keep it to myself, but just because nobody really asked me. They don't really ask me. So, if I had stayed in the environment that I was in, I am very clear about what the outcome for me would have been. And
Yeah.
it was right. And it was only the decision, number one, to choose myself. And then number two, because I chose myself, I decided to show up fully as myself. I showed up fully in my AP classes. I showed up fully in my applications to college. I showed up fully when I was in school. And I believe in showing up fully in any environment because you chose to be there,
Yeah.
right? You
Let me
chose to be there.
absolutely, absolutely. Let me ask you this, Vivian. In that moment when you're faced with this challenge, you're 14 years old, and you scan your environment because you looked around and you're like, wait, I don't want this future for myself.
Mhm.
Was that, do you think, an intuitive, something intuitive that came up for you that had you do that? Or was it more maybe like wisdom, or was it advice? Like how do you think that you were able to access that and figure that out for yourself and know that this isn't for me, this isn't going to be my future?
Honestly, I have to give my parents credit for that because, like I said, I was raised Christian, and my parents are both quite intellectual. They're both college graduates and things like that. And my mom is the one who both of my parents are immigrant people. They left from the environment that they grew up in and they moved. And they've showed me in their actions and even verbally many times over my life that if you want something, you have to go to where that thing is. You
Mm,
don't try and bring it to you. You have to go to it. And
mhm.
one of the things that my mother shares candidly, and I'm happy to share it with this audience, is that my grandmother had 3 sets of kids by 3 different guys. So she had 6 kids with 3 different guys. And she was very smart. My grandmother actually was like Mensa smart. She's an actual genius.
Wow.
But she wasn't people smart. And she would get taken advantage of a lot, like a lot of the time. And my mom would say to me, you want to be intelligent, but you also need to be smart. You need
Mm,
to use and really focus on having common sense. And if you see that things are not going well in your environment, then guess what you have the opportunity to do? Get up
and
and
change your
move.
mind.
Just
Yes.
move. you know so
Yes.
that I'll definitely give my parents credit for that. And in the moment, I know it really broke their heart to see me to see me have to make that decision. And I know for a fact they didn't agree with it
Yeah.
at first. I think they still don't,
Yeah.
but they can see why I chose what I chose. And they're certainly very proud of the life that I was able to create for myself after that.
Beautiful. And let me ask you this. When you were after, like, because, oftentimes those of us who are resilient are
Mhm.
going through the challenges and we don't realize how resilient we are or how resilient we are being. At a certain point, did you realize you were being resilient, or was that after, when you reflected back and looked back and said, oh, wow, I was resilient during all those years? Like, what was that like for you?
You know what? The first time that I knew that I was resilient was maybe 6 years later. I was in college, and there were so many different things going on. When I was about to graduate from college, was the middle of the recession. A lot of people were losing their jobs. They weren't able to be getting hired. There were so many things that were going on. And in that moment, just like you're talking about, is when I started my first business, and that business was doing quite well. And someone that I was in work study at the university. I worked for the dean of students at Barry University in Miami Shores. Go Buccaneers! And I was just going through all these different things that I was responsible for, and someone turned to me and said, "Oh my gosh, you're really resilient." And I thought, what do you mean? And like, anybody else would kind of be crying right now or break down and I said, I do cry. I do cry. And I want everybody listening to this to know, just because you can get up and stand up and do it again and show up again and get back on that horse does not mean that it's easy. And if I'm honest, doesn't mean that it gets any easier. It's just that you have confidence in your ability to overcome this thing, and that this thing becomes bigger and bigger, but also smaller and smaller. It's like, for example, one of the big things that I wanted to do it when I started my own business is I had a monetary goal that I wanted to make. I have no problem sharing it. I wanted to make $8,000. If I could make $8,000 a month, man, I was killing it, and I thought that that was the number. And since then, now my company makes, quite a lot of money. Well, way more than that. We don't make a lot of money. I don't want to say it like that, but we make more than that. And now I have goals of making, 6 figures in a month. Mm-hmm. To me, that's what I want to make. So always remember that this life we're living is a journey. There's never really, there's never enough. There's always more of life to live and more goals to overcome. So please know that in the best way, the challenge that you have right now is teaching you to be able to manage a challenge in the future.
Yes, absolutely. Absolutely. And, I think that's a good segue into the next topic, which, a lot of us that are resilient go through, but many people don't want to talk about, which is failure, right? But what is failure really? And so I wanted to ask you, Vivian, what has failure meant to you in your journey? And if you have had a failure, what was that like for you, or a perceived failure rather? What was that like for you? And what opened up for you as a result?
Well, I fail a lot, and that's because I try a lot. I try a lot of different things, so I fail all the time. And you know what? It hurts every time. It does. And that might be because I'm a sensitive and soft person. And one of the things that has been a life challenge, something for me to work on, is not feeling that hurt so intensely. And being able to, look back on my past and say that, I was able to overcome X, so I can overcome Z. And for me, I can give you a whole list of failures. You ready? I'm going to give you some.
Okay.
Number one is keeping my innocence in the eyes of my family. That's the first one. Number two was a really soft failure. I wanted to go to Georgetown University. It was my number one school. And I did the application, but I was too lazy to actually put the application in the mail. And I gave it to my brother, and my brother turned in my application one day late. And I got a delayed acceptance to Georgetown University, which was my number one pick school. Oh. And to me, that was a huge failure. But because of that delayed acceptance, I decided to come to Miami, Florida, because I thought, hey, if I have one semester, I'll do a semester in Miami, and then I'll go to Georgetown. Guess what? I've been in Miami for 16 years. So there's one. Then, I graduated from college in the recession. So I was fired not once, not twice, but 3 times, because the first one in was the first one out at that time. So I was fired all the time. And all of those things I saw as failures. And, I really thought, why did I put all this energy into going to school? Because I studied political science, public relations, and public administration. And those are my degrees. And I studied all that stuff because I wanted to work for the government. I wanted to work in the Foreign Affairs Office. My big goal is to be an ambassador one day. That's the thing I want to do. And I'm not that. So does that mean I'm a failure? No, I had to learn to use all the skills that I developed, learning all those things and being able to apply it now in my business, where I help people maybe not vote for something, but I help them buy things for a lot of different business owners who struggle with being able to speak to their audiences. So I think that when it comes to failure, it's a failure if you don't learn anything from it. Okay. Yes. And it's a failure if you let it weigh you down. The reason why I decided to write Stumbling Through Adulthood as an interactive journal for failing forward is because I am one of these people who tells myself a narrative That's just not true. So the activity of committing to journaling and writing down what happened from day to day is very helpful for me, because then I can look back on the pages and say, did I even give myself a reasonable amount of time to overcome this challenge? Did I let this thing come at me and now I'm panicking because, oh no, everything's going wrong in this one moment? And oftentimes the answer is yes. I'm overthinking it, and it's not that big of a deal.
Yeah. Yeah. It's amazing how, would it be safe to say that if you're not failing, odds are you're not trying?
I would agree 100% with that.
Yeah. And then, I always like to replace failure with another F word, which is feedback. And so what you were saying about learning a lesson from your failure, if you don't learn a lesson from your failure, then it is a failure. I think the lessons are the feedback that the failure actually gives you so that you could learn how to tweak, how to change, how to transform, what to do. If you're not failing, if you're not getting any feedback, how do you know what to do or what steps to take?
Exactly right. I mean, that's exactly right. And it is feedback. And, that also says that communication, how important communication is, right? Because not only communication externally with other people, but being able to communicate with yourself. For me, I use journaling as my number one tool to be able to talk to myself, to think through challenges, to really question why and what. I always like to remind myself that life is cause and effect. Cause and effect.
Yes.
Nothing just happens out of nowhere. Things don't happen for no reason. And of course, that goes back to my spirituality as well. If you have a different foundation, that kind of structure may not work for you. So you'll need to think of a different way to approach it. But for me, because I do believe that everything happens for a reason and that there is cause and effect in the world, I like to look back and say, what did I do to contribute to this particular situation? And I'll tell you something that is very striking when you start to think like this. And it can be it can be a lot to take in for the first time, especially if you don't like where you are in your life, or you've dealt with things that are quite obviously unfair. Things like, dealing with a health condition or being born in certain situations. It is very hard to overcome those things. But how you respond to the world around you is up to you. I want to be very clear about that. How you respond is up to you. And also, consistency compounds in the positive and the negative way. So if you are consistently reacting to life, consistently positioning yourself as a victim, you will consistently be that. It will compound. If you are open to the idea that you can take a beat and respond to the things that are happening around you, that you have a choice in the way that you're walking through the world, then that also compounds. It compounds over time.
Amazing. Wow. I love that analogy of the compounding. We think about that a lot for money and investments and things like that. But when you think about it with your thoughts and with your actions and with your intentionality and how you're being intentional one way or the other, and if you think about it as compounding, you're absolutely right, because you're putting towards, it's a cause and effect, right? You're putting towards energy or intention or whatever that is. And if you're putting it towards something that isn't serving you, it's just going to create that like downward spiral that you're just going to live into. And so being very intentional and being very careful with how you choose to respond to something, how you choose to use your time, how you let your emotions, drive you, or what choices that you make in your life. It makes a really big difference, because then that's what you're building for your future. That's so powerful. Thank you so much for sharing that.
You're welcome.
And so let me ask you this, because oftentimes those of us who are resilient, we went through challenges in our life, and, it tends to be sometimes a lonely road, because we like when you're the kind of person that has overcome a lot of challenges and obstacles, you tended to be the one to grab the bull by the horns and get it done, right? And so like if it was going to get done, it had to be, if it was going to be done right, it had to be done by you. And this is the way, and I got to do this, and I'm on my own, and I got to survive, and I got to thrive, and I got to do all these things, right? And you end up, again, taking the bull by the horns on your own. And so it's really difficult, or it can be difficult, to ask for help and to open up to support. So let me ask you this, Vivian, what has your journey been like as far as reaching out to those around you, community, people supporting you, mentors? Like, what was that like for you in your journey coming up? Were you able to ask for support? Were you able to open yourself up to support and help? And was it difficult or was it easy? And what was that journey like for you?
Well, it is. I'm not going to say it was difficult, but it is a challenge, because you're so right that when you've gone through several different things, you start to get the thick skin, especially if you're coming from an environment where people are not open to helping one another. Then you start to develop that, and it can become your secret weapon, right? But it can become your kryptonite too. So for me, I can say that I've been very, very blessed, because when I was younger, I used to pray all the time for wisdom. I would pray for wisdom, which is quite a thing to pray for, because, we don't live in the matrix. You can't get strapped in and downloaded wisdom. You get put in a lot of crappy situations so that so that you can finally learn, right? As humans, sometimes we have to feel it to learn it. So, there's that. And then there's also the fact that I've been blessed that there's been people around me who could see the potential in me and offer their help, because I'm not the kind of person who would ask for help. But I am glad to say that 2 years ago, I decided to invest in my own care, my well-being, and my mental health. And when I invested in my mental health and was able to talk to a counselor, it became easier for me to find the words and be able to communicate when I do need help from other people. And I'm so happy that I made that investment, because not only has it helped me, and the thing that triggered me to do it actually was I was getting married, and we needed to go to marriage counseling before we get married. And it was so eye-opening for me. And I decided to stay on and continue to get support in that way. And it has been transformative. I could have never predicted that we would run into a global pandemic, and that we'd be going through all these and confronted with all of these different thoughts, because you're spending so much time alone and in the relationships that you decided to share with whoever it is that you share your home with. So I'm so happy that I had those tools, and I've really become an advocate for your mental health and paying attention to those different opportunities to invest in your sanity. Okay, invest in your sanity, and invest in having help from others. Becoming a new mom during the pandemic, I was pregnant during the pandemic. I gave birth during the pandemic. I, was not able to see my family or anything like that during that time, and I had to become okay with telling people, I don't feel good. I'm dealing with postpartum. I need help. I need you to FaceTime me, please. Do a Zoom meeting. Let's do something. And I thank God that I had the tools to be able to do that, because it can be quite challenging, and it can be your kryptonite to not be open to asking for help.
Oh, amazing. And so as a result of being able, it's almost like you had to learn a skill that you had become so good at being on your own and doing your thing that you didn't even realize what it was like to ask for help. So it was like by having the therapy, opening yourself up to the therapy, you were able to gain the skills to actually ask, like verbalize the question, like, I need help, please Zoom me, FaceTime me, do something, and it's really powerful, because, a lot of us are out there right now and are probably going through it alone. And that's why I always like to talk about this, because it's so important to reach out for help, or even not even maybe if it's reaching out, but at least allowing the help, because help is everywhere. Like the subtle signs are everywhere. That person that says hello to you, the person that reaches out and gives you something, or gives you a piece of advice, or, there's always something around you that's here to support you. And if you're open to it, then you start receiving and you start opening yourself up. And it really makes a big difference, because we're tribal creatures. We thrive in community. through evolution, like we were based in the tribe. Like everybody in the tribe had a strength. Others had weaknesses. When some had to go hunting, the others would take care of the kids. When some were cooking, the other ones were knitting. And, the wise man and the medicine man. And, there was different people for everything. And so we really thrive in community in that support. And it's something that I feel like is lost on us now in modern society, where we're all like separated and, we all live in different cities, or our families, or even the immigrant story, our families are in other countries and we come here. And so, there's a lot of disconnect there. But like, even in our local communities with our friends or colleagues or coworkers, different people that we can lean on and open ourselves to receive that support. So I think it's super important. Thank you so much for sharing that.
Thank you. Thank you.
Absolutely. And so I always like to, well, there's two final questions before we wrap up, because I know your time is very, very important. So thank you so much for taking the time. One question is, after everything you've learned in your journey, if you look back at everything you've learned and where you are now, what are some of the things that you take with you from your own journey that you'll take with you into the future that you've learned yourself?
I think what we were just sharing about the importance of having a community around you, being open to asking for help. One of the things that I say all the time in my business, Flourish Media, is, if you want to go fast, you go by yourself. But if you want to go far, then you need a team. And that's something that I say outwardly to other people. But I hope those of you who are listening to this conversation realize that I'm saying that for myself. I need to hear it. That's why I say it a lot. And, with my business, Flourish Media, and then our nonprofit Behind the Leaf that hosts the Flourish Media Conference, being able to raise that $15 million 6 years ago was really impactful for a number of the women in our community. And I do refer to my community as my tribe, because exactly what you were saying is that all of us have something. They have our area of genius to contribute. And if nothing else, I am bold enough to ask. That's the thing that I can do. I know that I have a community of people who are more well off than others, and I am at least bold enough to ask them to help someone else. So that's why I believe in making sure that we cultivate a community that will help us. And, I do have a private Facebook group. It's FMC, where women do business. Or if you find me, I'm at Vivian Olodun on all social media. If you find me and you want to ask about the private Facebook group that we have, then I'm happy to give you that information for you to ask to be a part of that community. And, when it comes to being able to cultivate scenarios where women are supported, I just think it's so important to do, because as a people, women do so much for everybody else. We do so much for everybody else, whether you're a mother or not, whether you are a sister, a friend, a partner. Women do so much in the world for other people, and we are trained not to ask for help when we need it.
Yes.
So I think it's very important to create an environment where women can ask for help. And quite frankly, when it comes to the money, I don't want you to have to ask. I know that you need it. So I want to share that as openly and as often as much as I can.
Amazing. Beautiful. And, something that I always like to share as far as women, and I'll just make this brief, is that the woman is the nurturer, like just by biologically speaking, just for the mere fact that we carry a womb. Even if you're not a mother, even if you don't have children, you still are, like, biologically, the woman is a nurturing type of person. And so we're constantly nurturing our environments and helping our environments thrive. So I wholeheartedly agree with that. And I thank you for sharing that. And our last and final question is, Vivian, what words of wisdom would you like to leave our viewers who may be on a similar journey as you have been on of resilience?
You know what? I'm going to take this one. I think that this is from TD Jakes. Is, if you're going through hell, keep going. Keep going. Get all the way through. Get all the way. Don't stop. Don't take a pit stop. Don't, find friends. Don't bring other people in hell with you, but just keep going.
Yes. Yes, absolutely. And you'll get to the other side.
That's right.
You'll get to the other side. Well, Vivian, this has been amazing. I can sit here and talk to you for hours. I've already said that to you a bunch of times. I can sit and talk with you for days. You are amazing. You are definitely a pleasure and such a wealth of knowledge and such a giver and an amazing person in our community and globally as well. So I really appreciate your time and thank you so much for being here.
Thank you for having me. You all support this woman. Share this with somebody you know. Tell them that they need to sign up for her program so that you can invest in yourself and so that you can do great things in the world that you were always meant to do.
Oh, amazing. Thank you so much. And for you guys out there, as you know, we're still going to continue to be here live through the month of May with more women like this, more amazing women making an impact and sharing their journeys of resilience with you. So please tune in on Wednesdays and Fridays at 5 p.m. Eastern. And like I always say, be kind to yourself, be kind to one another, love yourselves. And until next time, we'll see you soon. Thank you so much. Bye.